Hi there, everyone. In this movie, I'm going to tell you three stories that I think you will enjoy. Let's start with this crypto basic. In the next 12 months, could Ripple become an XRP bank company? The CEO of Bitwise seems to think it's possible, and I agree with him. Also, let me know what you think. Leave your thoughts in the comments. The next story from Crypto Briefing is also very interesting. After a recent board approval, Donald Trump Jr. is backs the plan to buy Ether, XRP, and Solana. Yes, you did hear that right. Wait until I explain everything to you. If now another business uses XRP and other coins, it sounds like you've heard of them before, right? But here's the catch. In fact, they're using XRP as an asset for their treasury balance. That's pretty cool, huh? Also, guess what? It says in the title that Donald Trump Jr. is an individual investor in this business. That does make things more interesting. Also, this from Yahoo Finance, which is the better buy right now, XRP or Bitcoin. This is a good question for people who are new to crypto. Really, though, don't we know the answer by now? Still, it's an interesting argument that you should look into to get a different point of view. Before we go any further, I want to make it clear that I am not an expert on money, and nothing I say or write should be taken as such. Okay, don't buy or sell anything based on what I say here. Always find out things on your own first. Okay, let's start with this first subject. It's really a very interesting one. Even more interesting is the fact that this idea doesn't come from just anyone. In the crypto world, this person is known for being smart and trustworthy. So let's get to it. Hunter Horsley, CEO of Bitwise Asset Management, has joined the conversation about Ripple's possible change of direction to become an XRP Treasury business. Horsley got people talking about the idea that Ripple could make this big move in the next 12 months in a tweet today. He said he was curious about whether Ripple would be called an XRP Treasury company by next year. To be honest, though, it depends on what you mean by that. There are a lot of different types of businesses that could be called bank firms, right? What do you really mean? If you're talking about businesses, many publicly traded ones have said they hold XRP as a treasury backup asset. Hey, that's great. Some people might even be more likely to buy their stock. Now, here's the deal. It's crazy that some of those publicly traded companies use XRP for their private payment flows. That money isn't just sitting there as a backup. Their real needs are being met by it. It's really cool. Let's talk about a different method, like what MicroStrategy does. They put everything they had into it and bought a huge amount of Bitcoin. Now, things get tricky. There are worries among some people about the risks. Some people say this approach is just using leverage. It's not impossible for things to go really wrong, but it's not likely either. Things could go badly, and they would have to sell. This would put a huge amount of Bitcoin on the market. It's a little different if an XRP treasury business is involved. There is no doubt that Ripple already has the biggest XRP reserve. But what we're really talking about is the idea that Ripple could take investments backed by XRP. That's what most people mean when they talk about this idea. It's kind of like the microplan method. But Ripple doesn't really need the money. That's why I'm not sure about this idea. Still, Ripple is always looking for new ways to make money when it makes sense to do so. They are always expanding into new areas of crypto, whether it's stablecoins, security solutions, or something else fun. They're also not just sitting there. There's always some risk with these kinds of things, so I'm not sure about this one. I really don't think it's important, especially since you don't need those kinds of funds. Did you hear what Brad Garlinghouse said not long ago? It seems like only a few weeks ago. If I remember right, and I'm sorry if I'm a little off, he said that Ripple has about 3. That's a lot, so it doesn't seem like they should do this. That doesn't mean it's impossible. Who knows? It just makes me a little skeptical. It's okay if my gut tells me I'm wrong. There could be a good reason for it, but in the end, this isn't really bad news for XRP. Now here's the deal. This could cause a huge amount of XRP to be dumped on the market when things don't go as planned. And if it's a big enough amount, it could be a problem, especially if more than one business does it. That's why a lot of people are scared that these Bitcoin finance firms will go in this direction. I don't see a problem at all if there is no risk of going bankrupt and no borrowing of money. It's clear that there is no risk or advantage. And to be honest, that's why most businesses say they'll keep XRP as a backup asset. What they do is different from what MicroStrategy does. That's the main point I want to make here. XRP is being held as a reserve currency by more and more businesses. That's pretty cool, right? Now we come to this story. The younger Trump has given Thumbs Up Media the go-ahead to buy more cryptocurrency. Thumbs Up is a social media marketing and cryptocurrency-focused business based in Los Angeles. On Wednesday, the company announced that its board has approved plans to invest in digital assets other than Bitcoin. At the moment, Thumbs Up has more than $2 million in Bitcoin. They can now start buying other cryptocurrencies such as Ether, XRP, Solana, Dogecoin, Litecoin, and USDC. The company pays people to promote its goods on sites like Instagram. This is a big step for the business. Also, this is an interesting fact. There are 350,000 shares in the company that are worth over $4 million owned by Donald Trump Jr., the oldest son of former President Donald Trump. With this new approval, Thumbs Up seems ready to play an even bigger role in the world of crypto. That sounds good, right? One more business that sees XRP's value as a reserve currency. That's pretty cool, right? And to be honest, this is likely to happen more often in the future. It only took a level playing field and the end of the US ban on crypto, which happened after Trump won the election. Now for the big question, Bitcoin versus XRP. What's the best thing to buy now? It seems like a pretty simple answer. XRP is the clear winner. I don't know how much Bitcoin is worth right now. It changes so much. It was over $118,000 the last time I looked, though. Not a dime. Right? Even if it doubled to $240,000, there would be no change. To be honest, I don't think that will happen this market period. Don't hold your breath for it. It doesn't look like it will get anywhere near that. Let's talk about XRP now. What would it take for XRP to double? Maybe it would need to hit $5.01 or even a little higher. To be honest, not much. There isn't nearly as much money in XRP as there is in Bitcoin, and I think it's really cheap right now. Because of all the SEC trouble, it's been handled like a tax for years, but that is finally going to change. The market is now making up time. Also, which option is the better one right now? Are you really asking that with a straight face? Anyway, I'm not going to talk about the whole piece right now, but I do want to draw attention to one part. To begin, they always talk about the same things when they talk about Bitcoin. Since it's hard to get, it's a good way to save money. Not really anything new, but then they talk about XRP, and I have to say I love this section. It's hard to say enough good things about XRP, isn't that the truth? It feels like I've been saying this for a long time, and it's great to see that it's finally being taken into account here. The case for investing in XRP is definitely one of a kind. It costs about 228 cents right now, but that was a few days ago before the most recent price jump. Things are going quickly. They also said that the XRP ledger XRPL had just turned on an automated market maker tool. Any wallet can now change assets on the chain and make money from amounts that aren't being used. But to be honest, that function isn't really new. I don't understand why they say it was just started. Is that something that came out more than a year ago? I don't know, maybe early last year. Time passes sometimes, but I think that's when it happened. Anyway, it's an important trait for the people who will be using the chain, who are mostly institutional investors. But really, they shouldn't have said it that way. The phrase intended users makes it sound like XRP was only made for businesses, but that's not the case at all. The goal of making XRP was to make Bitcoin better, and it's not just for big businesses. Yes, organizations are part of everyone, but they aren't the only ones. That thought doesn't make sense. Some people in the community make silly claims like, you shouldn't hold XRP. I see this as similar, or XRP wasn't meant to be sold. It doesn't make sense to say things like that. Just ask David Schwartz if you want to know what the point is. He will say that all they did was try to make Bitcoin better. In words, that's what he said. I'm sorry, but things like this really bother me. Now let's move on to something more interesting. The XRPL has built-in tools that are friendly to normal people. These tools make it easier to follow laws like Know Your Customer, anti-money laundering, and stop laundering money. Know Your Customer, KYC tools like approved trust lines, blacklists, and the ability to freeze accounts help issuers follow the rules.